My brother. What's good, bro? Yes, sir.
Yo, so, hey, I'm DJ Head. I'm from born and raised here in Los Angeles, California. Here with a guy of mine. His name is David Gross. We know him obviously through his relationships with Nipsey Hussle, Vector 90, many different business ventures. But I'm here to kind of dive in and figure out who the fuck and why the fuck is David Gross here. You know what I'm saying? Let's get into it.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you, first and foremost. Is there anything, well, I did a little intro for you, but do you want to tell the people a little bit something about yourself, before we get into it?
Yeah, I do a little something. You already introduced me and made the connection to Nip. That's why most of the people watching this will probably know me. I'm an investor and a real estate developer. I spent half my life learning finance, economics, the business of investing. Worked on Wall Street for a decade. Before coming back to LA and then kind of transitioning and getting into the things that people identify me with. But there was a whole lifetime before all that.
I mean, obviously, people who know me know I love this city.
Yeah.
I love it. It is what it is. But, you have an interesting background as far as being somebody who is kind of bridging the gap between the finances and the turf. You know what I'm saying? I want you to get into because you left LA, right? Mm-hmm. You're from here, your family, your lineage is from here, but then you left, right?
Yeah, so I left here when I was in the fourth grade. And so I didn't leave alone. I have an older brother who's 3 years older than me. So say 9 and 12 or 10 and 13, we both got sent to Texas. Our family life, me and my brother have different fathers. So family life between my mother and father, my mother, his father, it's just wild era, crazy times. Our parents were kids, and then LA was tricky, and so they sent both of us away so we'd have a shot to escape the shit that caught all of our uncles on both sides up, all of our cousins up. So we both got sent away to Texas, and that gap, he was already outside. He was already kind of in it at his age. So we both got sent to Texas, and within 6 months, he got sent back. And then it's just, a gap emerged like that and just got wider across the years. I was 10, I ended up staying, and we were in different places. He got sent to Houston. I got sent to a small town in East Texas, a really small town, 500, literally, I don't know anybody else that's from a town as small as when I was growing up in, 500 people, and that was just a whole different head trip. I was in Texas until I was 18, and then I went to New York.
Yeah, and your reason for going to New York?
Because I didn't want to go back to LA. LA was chaos. There are aspects of it I loved. I missed my family when I was in Texas, but the shit was chaos. And even as a kid, I knew it was chaos. I didn't love Texas though, because I went from South Central LA to a fucking little bitty town where there was just nothingness. You know what I mean? So it saved my life probably, or just changed me from having a very different life. I'm lucky that I lived in LA first because I saw shit I never would have seen in that small town. My range of vision would have been smaller. I had an uncle who was 18, 19. Every other month he'd have a different BMW, a different fucking Mercedes, a different
what's up.
Ducati, right? He might not have kept it or he might have been getting, but I saw it. I saw his Rolexes, I saw his chains. I was in a small town in Texas where, the wealthiest family, I remember their names, the Spivey family, because they own the hardware store, right? And they had nice pickup trucks. So if that would have been my reality my whole life, I never would have went to New York.
Yeah.
But I knew I wasn't coming back to LA. I knew I wasn't staying in Texas, and I just had this image of New York in my head as a place where I could go do something, be something, be whatever I wanted to.
Gotcha.
And the trippy thing is, I thought all of New York State was like the city. All I'd seen was on TV or movies. Yeah. And they only show Manhattan. Yeah. And so I thought all of fucking New York was a big city. They might
show Brooklyn a little bit.
But it's still a big city. Yeah. So I thought all of New York, and I just wanted to be in a big ass city. And it was not that.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So when you did all that and you got into your finance career and stuff like that out there in New York, what brought you back to LA? I need to get back to the house.
Well, don't skip over the finance career, because I talk to people now, and it's crazy when you see yourself reflected through the eyes of others or their perceptions of you, and people just think, oh, had it all mapped out, or you just got dropped down and you landed in finance or on Wall Street in a place where things were figured out. But I was the first person in my family to do all that shit, right? To go to college, to have a career, I learned by doing and making mistakes and then asking people around me. People around me who were also trying. I was asking college kids around me, what did your father do? Why do you have a BMW in college? Oh, finance? Okay. What's the best job in finance? Oh, banker, trader? Okay. What's the best bank? Literally, I applied for a job internship at Goldman Sachs because through that series of question and answer, I learned that investment banking paid the most and Goldman Sachs was the best bank. And so and plus mix in some ignorance, like not knowing, oh, this is the most aspirational job you can get and it's a 1 in a fucking 100,000 shot. I was like, I gotta go do that.
Yeah.
So I just say with my career in finance, it was a process of trial and error, discovery, a lot of mistakes, and figuring it out before I ended up coming back to LA.
Got you. And that's important too,
Yeah.
because obviously representation matters, and especially being the first person in your family to do it. I know it's this generation, and then also it's really my generation. Like we're like the first to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
For
Finish
sure.
school, etc. But so then, it sounded like you had a good.
Yeah, I had a
It sounded like you had a good out there. So what was the purpose of making your return here?
an opportunity. Like I came out here. It was I came to work with a prominent entertainment family to help them start a family office, and so I came for a job opportunity. It was also a chance to reconnect with family, friends, reconnect with the place where I was originally from, and so the reconnecting to other stuff ended up dominating and becoming a bigger part of my life and story than I ever would have thought about before coming back.
Got you. And so now you come back here, you got a job opportunity. Obviously, that was big enough for you, a big enough opportunity for you to leave and uproot yourself. So why the pivot into doing your own thing? Because I see this relationship start to forge with Nipsey, and that's where a lot of me and my peers and my friends, we know you from. Like, that's when we started to pay attention to you, because it's like, okay, he fuck with you. I trust his judge of character, so that naturally opens us up to your introduction into who you are for us. So how did that happen? Like, did you meet him like in the process? Did you start to build a relationship?
When I came back, like I have a lot of brothers and sisters, and they were all born after I left LA. So I grew up loving them from afar and knowing them from afar, right? And watching them grow up from afar. And I'm in New York, tunnel vision, just trying to survive and trying to thrive on Wall Street. So it's easy to kind of exist in two spaces and kind of understand two spaces. But if you're not really living in something, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. And so when I came back to LA, the neighborhood I came from, my family and friends stayed out here. It wasn't out of sight, out of mind. It was like, I can't just exist in the world that I'm in. I got to think about these other worlds, and I got to try to connect some dots, right?
Yeah.
So even before, like, one of the most impactful people on my personal journey and evolution in LA was my younger brother. A lot of people in Inglewood knew him. He was one of the ones in his neighborhood.
Yep. Salute to him.
And so he got killed a year and a half, me being back. But even before he got killed, just talking to him and trying to understand like what his life was going to be. He was a rapper. He wanted to have his own clothing brand. He did. He had a group. He had a record label. He had a brand he wanted to launch. But I got to live a whole different life through hanging out with him, talking to him, and experiencing. I'm like, bro, so what's your plan? Like, what are you going to do? And he's tatted up, so he neck, hands, obviously chest. And I was like, bro, you gotta make it rapping. You gotta make it with some creative. Yeah. So I was like, bro, these people are scared of you. You go try to get a job somewhere else. So understanding the thought process and hearing like the path that got him where he was, that's what first made me like, yo, this shit is different. And like, I left LA when I was a kid, and when I left, gangs and crack and that was real. But I just took for granted that the whole world had changed since then. And like, I would have, if you had asked me to say, are there more kids going to fucking university or going into gangs coming out of high school in South LA, I would have said for sure college. You'd be like, give me a ratio. I'd have been like,
Yeah, that's not the case.
3-to-1, 4-to-1. Like
Yeah,
going
yeah.
to college versus it's fucking 2016. But I came back and it's definitely not the case. And I'm like, why is this? Why is, South LA kind of stuck it's still in kind of the same place? Some physical changes, but like that whole shit's still there. And so I couldn't just rock out and do my own thing while I'm living in a city with people that have my blood in them that are connected to me and they're trying to figure it out,
Yeah.
And so then I started figuring out, started thinking about what can I do? And this is almost immediate. What can I do that's authentic to me? Because I'm not a preacher. I never wanted to be some other shit, right? I just want to be a person that made money. I want to live a good life, but I want my friends and homies to live a good life. So I was like, what can I do that doesn't feel fake to me? And I was like, I want to start something that's oriented around business and specifically real estate, because that's what I was focused on in South Central. And so that's the start of our story, the story everybody kind of knows a part of.
Yeah, Vector 90.
Yep.
And then that's where, like I just said, that's where we kind of got the introduction to you.
Yeah.
And your relationship with Nipsey forged because of Vector 90, or you already had a pre-existing relationship with him?
No, we didn't have a relationship. Obviously, I had 10 years of knowing who he was and being a fan and loving his whole movement. And so when I started working on the deck and the business plan for Vector 90, in March or April of 2016, I wrote it, with him as I knew that me going to South Central and trying to be like, hey, look, everybody, this is the shit we about to be on. That's not happening, right?
Right.
I'm not a dumbass. So I was like, I need somebody who touches the people, who the people believe in, the people's champ, right? And he was the only, I didn't even have a list of here are the 2 or 3 people. When I started writing it, I was like, I need somebody who is the vessel, who is the people who can bring everybody in. It was Nip. And so then I started trying to get in touch with him. And it's crazy. My little brother I was talking about, him and one of Nip's little homies, actually one of YG's little homies, Ace, who was cool with Nip, they connected dots and put me on with Nip's team. And this is probably the summer of 2016. Mm-hmm. And I had the idea and I was like, yo, this is a plan I wrote for Nip. I want to present it to him. I met with his team, JP and Steve-O, and they're like, look, he's in album mode now, but this is definitely something he'll fuck with. Let's bring it back to him, once we get done with what we're working on. And as fate would have it, me and bro connected at a Laker game, later that year.
Yeah.
So I had the idea, was sitting on it. We were sitting next to each other at a game. He was there to see Harden play. Him, YG, and Kieran Sybil. And so we naturally just said, what's up, dapped up, and just started talking a little bit. And then by the end of the game, I told him the whole play. And he was like, bro, he was like, I'm with that. Let's run. And I was like, all right, when you want to meet? He was like, what you doing tomorrow? And so the rest is
Damn.
Yeah.
I remember that Laker game. I was there.
Right.
And it was, I remember YG got a lot of shit for having that Harden jersey on at the Laker game.
I remember that too, because he turned around and he was like, he from Bompton. He was yelling at people.
I remember that. That was funny.
Yeah.
But so Nip was like, let's connect tomorrow.
Yep.
And he followed through on that. Y'all end up linking.
Detroit. He literally, my office at the time was in Calabasas, so he really showed up the next day. Him and the homie BH, they showed up in Calabasas. We had a 3-hour meeting. We walked out, shook hands, said, let's do it. And then we started looking for the Vector 90 space.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn. That's interesting. I think that's important to know too, because if you have a vision and you saw it all the way through to completion, it wasn't oh, I can't get him, I'm gonna do this, no plan B type shit. The Vector 90 thing, I felt like that was something that had never been done before, especially in our community, because there you have a lot of groups, Boys and Girls Club, you have all these different facilities, but you don't really have anything that's kind of merging all encompassing aspects, finances, real estate, co-working space, et cetera. When you were putting that together, did you ever think about this isn't possible? Or has it never been?
Nah, you know what? I actually heard that from.
Because I know a lot of people who have done things, it's well, this isn't possible. Who knows who's going to believe in this?
So it's funny. So let me start with what you said in the beginning. You're like, there are Boys and Girls Clubs, there are, community centers, different things. I didn't even really know what I wanted it to be. Well, we had on paper what it was, right? But one of my defining things was I didn't want it to be that. I didn't want it to have a community center, nonprofit vibe. Like, we have more entrepreneurs in our community. We have more people who are ambitious and hungry to go get it in our community without some like space to connect, vibe, and plan. So I wanted it to be for them, right? And it didn't matter the age, but really we were targeting people who have businesses, trying to start businesses. We wanted it to be a place to connect, work, socialize, exchange ideas, create. So at the core was a co-working space, but it was always just this place for people from our community to connect and be themselves and really try to figure it out. I went on an award tour of the top co-working spaces at the time, and everyone was like, look, it's just not gonna work because there's a bunch of shit you need to be around it. You need restaurants, you need this, you need that, so people can like step outside and live the rest of their life and then come back in to work. But I was like, nah, we can figure it out. When we reopen, I'm gonna take all those lessons and it's gonna be even better than it was the first time.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then now obviously it was definitely a devastating blow when Nip passed. Your involvement both professionally and personally, I think that, well, it took a toll on everybody.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. You know what I'm saying? It hit everybody differently. And then somebody like yourself being that closely knit within whatever that 4-year span or 3-4 year span that you guys were, every day in and out with it. How did that affect you, like when that happened? Because I would imagine, I know how the rest of us dealt with it. I had to be in the forefront of it because that was requested of me. Like, we need you to be the voice, we need you to be strong, but everybody else, it seems like they kind of just took a step back.
Yeah. No, I think anybody in LA, I think probably anybody in California, but definitely anybody in LA, Black and Hispanic, like, you really felt that shit. Like, it was you lost a friend, a family member, like, it was just a generalized hurt. And then obviously the closer you are to his life in some way, the more hurt it was. And it's just tough being in LA during that time because everybody's grieving and it's always the thing. If people connect you with them, it becomes a conversation or something like that. So one, I was always super sensitive to the fact that like 2018, half of 2017, 2018, going into 2019, we were super visible together, right? So people saw a lot of imagery, a lot of the initiatives we're working on. I was always super sensitive, like, bro has a family, like a great family, right? And then he has friends that are like family, and they're hurting the most. It's their loss. So even though, you might not see the homeboy that's been his homeboy for the past 15, 20 years, has been his day one, you might not see or know him. Like, they lost their son, brother, they lost their ace.
Provider.
And I loved them like a brother, but I felt a deference to, respecting it really is there. Like, it's like when I lost my brother, that was like something deeply, it was just a different level of pain and hurt. And so my instinct was just to step back, you know what I mean? The first thing we did when he transitioned, we closed Vector 90, and I think we kept it closed for like 3 months because it was just such everybody who worked there, he was there so much, everybody who worked there was impacted, right? Like, one, he's like their Tupac, the Tupac of this generation, and they got to see him and be around him, so their hurt relative to other people in LA who looked up to him and loved him is like on 100. So we shut down Vector 90. We finished a documentary about this investment fund we were going to start, right? So literally it was dope. It was just a movie. It was a literal movie, and it was about this concept of bringing everybody from every hood together to invest, behind the Nipseys and the, whoever that person was in that, the Atlantas, Baltimores, DCs, us coming together and investing in one thing and really showing people like we can lead and we can do shit together. So we finished that in February, and we were going to launch this fund in the summer. And so we talk about business, that changed that, right? So we killed the documentary because it was about the last year of his life. And like he has such a big life story that needs to be told, and we didn't want that to take away from it.
Facts.
And then you're not going to raise a fund where you're asking people to invest money And obviously there's some people who would have invested just because they believe in the mission and vision. But I know everybody who invested at that time, they would have been investing in support of Nip, right?
Correct.
And you don't want to build a business that way. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? Like for that
That's
first
violation.
year, for that first year, I just wanted everything, from my perspective, everything around his legacy that I was involved in, just wanted it to crystallize. Because the way people saw him, like, oh shit, he's an entrepreneur, investor, he's giving back to the people. That's perfect. We never want to touch that or do anything to like take away from that, right? Especially with business. So we just gave it time. You know what I mean? And took care of the shit we had to take care of and fought the little fights that in my space that I was involved in this world did that and just kind of like kicked back.
I feel that. I feel that. Now you mentioned this documentary being forged around what you're building now, which is On Our Own, but it transformed from another company, right?
It was just a different name. It was a different name. It was the exact same concept, but the name was a play off of a law called this legislation about opportunity zones. You probably heard it as a buzzword, but it's about it's a tax incentive to get people to invest in inner city communities. And so we were raising a fund in that way. But the more I dug into it, the deeper I got. I pivoted because I'm like, man, this isn't the first idea was dope. Like to have the Nipseys and if we're in Atlanta, there's a million people, but the 2 Chainz in Philly, get the Meeks of the world. To have that group together is powerful because that's representation, that's cultural leadership, it's symbolism. But because I got the chance to just step back and do nothing on our opportunity and lean more into the law, and I went around to different inner cities and talked to people and heard the feedback and even talked to legislators about the law, and I started thinking like, damn, it's gonna be dope if we do this. Why can't we do it with the people? Why can't they invest with us too? And it's just not possible with that law because you got to be investing capital gains, and most of our community doesn't happen. Literally, I was part of all these committees in kind of thought leadership groups on the law, how to make it better. And so I fought for the longest time to implement a change where people who lived in opportunity zones could just invest their savings or their earnings and not have to be capital gains. But it got shot down. So at that point I pivoted. I was like, because whatever I do, I'm gonna take the cultural leaders and the entertainers, athletes, people at platforms, but I'm taking the community too, and we're doing this shit together. So that's been the tweet. But it's the same mission, same goal, same vision. The part of the name that was keyed off of opportunity zones is gone, and On Our Own is just more direct. Like, let's own our own shit.
On Our Own. Yeah. So On Our Own initiative is, and what I mean, you read me in on it, and I remember you telling me about it initially, like when in the first stages. But I like the fact that everybody can come out of the stands and be on the court with you, and I like that aspect.
It's us winning together, bro. Like it's the masses of our people getting to cheer for the handful that made it. It was dope that our instinct is to cheer, but now it's time. Like we gotta build this bridge. We gotta find a way to have collective wins, and we're all not gonna be, of course, the superstars and the superstar athletes and entertainers are gonna have bigger deals and bigger wins that we're always gonna clap for when they make a first and do something profound and significant. But like, there needs to be some structure, some systemic way that we can all partner and win together. Right. So collectively we're building wealth, because that's the only way that I see change being made. I figured there would have been more black kids going to college than joining gangs, or at least in LA and places like it, and it's not the case. The only way that shit changes is if we collectively find pathways to success and to create wealth and to share opportunity.
Yeah.
And so that's what this represents.
Got you. So what do you say to like people that, because people obviously, when you start talking about finance, you start talking about the inner city, South Central specifically, when you start talking about disenfranchised, poverty, all these keywords that people hear and don't necessarily fully understand, all like that, but then they start looking at people like yourself coming in, oh, this person's trying to take the hood away from it, this person's trying to gentrify it, this person's trying to get all the low income people out of here and bringing in all these big corporations to take over our property and shit like that. what's the stigma? I mean, what's the counter to that? Because the way you describe On Our Own to me, it seems like it's totally the opposite of what that is.
So what I'll say is gentrification and displacement are serious issues, but anyone who can look at anything I'm doing and say, oh, you're a gentrifier or displacer, you're just a black version of it, you're 180 degrees in your view of the world. First of all, it's so much easier for someone like me just to make money in the traditional way, to stay on Wall Street, to build houses in the Hamptons, to invest in real estate, in nice markets. There's a lot of money from banks and institutions to back me to go and do that in neighborhoods they understand and believe in. So this isn't an easy path, and I'm not doing it because it's more money. It's harder, and it's less money. But in terms of, well, why am I doing it, is because all the gaps, all the metrics you hear about black wealth, earnings, income, versus everyone else, that shit has to change. All of our problems aren't about money and resources. There are a lot of problems now that can't be fixed with that. Yeah. But even those problems, like at the root of them, is economics and resources.
Facts.
So you can't fix any of that shit unless you at least start with that, right? There needs to be focus on trauma and mental health and holistic health. There needs to be preachers, school teachers, all of that. There needs to be activists fighting the good fights. We need fucking money and investment though.
To do it.
Like you just not living in reality if you don't think we need that. And who is doing that? Who is raising the money? Who's investing the money? Who they're investing in? All that fucking matters. So if not me, who do you want it to be? And when I say not me, I'm not even saying, well, one, I am saying specifically me. I'm saying people like me. So you don't want me to do it either? Who the fuck do you want to do it?
Who's gonna do it?
Who's gonna do it? Who has been doing it? Nobody in masses, because that's why we have the issues we have.
Yeah.
So sometimes we eat each other. and it's just, I don't even know what the outcome is supposed to be.
Yeah. I think this is just a cannibalistic mentality.
Yeah.
Like people just being lack of resources, lack of, I don't know, education probably, not understanding the full scope of things. But I'm glad you said that though, because I know a lot of people feel like that. So On Our Own is something that it's an initiative, right? You just kind of touched on that. But what the hell, like, is it specifically? Like, is it crowdsourcing? Is it an investment firm? Is it a Ponzi scheme? What?
That's a good one. So actually, somebody else asked me that. So like, is it
a pyramid scheme?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck is it?
So no, man, it's an investment fund that we're crowdfunding and letting anyone invest with as little as $1,000. Thing that's unique about ours is where we're investing. So we're primarily investing in inner city communities. We'll buy, the retail strip malls that you and your grandmother shop at every day, and we'll curate them differently. You know what I mean? So it won't be greasy burger spot and pawn shop, etc. It's buying things and making them feel better for the community.
Right.
So it's, at its core, it's a crowd-funded real estate investment platform.
So On Our Own, the initiative, what can people do to support if they definitely want to be involved?
People in California right now, go to ownourOwn.com. You got $1,000 to $2,500 you can invest today. It's going to be reinvested in real estate and small businesses in California. People everywhere else in the country watching this, October, we're going national. So the original On Our Own concept, we're going live in October.
Wow.
But right now, if you're in California, ownourOwn.com, come fuck with us. People get a little confused because they see us talking about On Our Own California, and they see a lot of conversation around Broadway boxing. So actually, the On Our Own, the thing we've been planning for the past, since 2018, that's finally going to launch in October. Now, what you see now is like a little offshoot. It was a diversion from On Our Own. We created this California fund really for one specific deal. And it was an important enough and big enough deal it made sense to take. I worked with, the California Department of Financial Innovation for like 6 months to set up something so that anybody from California with as little as $1,000 could invest. And it was brain damage. It was brain damaging to work on this because we were going after the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall.
Really?
Yeah, and so that was important enough and big enough to like go off course for like 8 months, 9 months.
When you say buy the Crenshaw Mall,
Yeah.
like you, or you mean like when you mean like so on our own is gonna buy the Crenshaw Mall
On our own California.
on our own California.
Yeah. So one, not just me, and that's. And I mean, maybe there are some people out there that could do it on their own, but in reality, that's not how it works, right? So it was my team, and my team, in that I went and got a large financial institution to say, hey, we'll give you the money. And then I had a development partner, one of the biggest, dopest development partners in the country. That was my team of greats that was going into this deal. So I had the money, I had a dope development partner, and I had formed On Our Own California specifically so that anybody from South LA could invest in the mall. So that was the killer.
Wow.
That was the killer app for us going into the bidding process. We were like, nah, bro, I really made something that's live and ready to go. So it's not just our little group that's driving the process. It's everybody. Literally, the way the fund works, anybody in California could have invested. And I had to jump through these hoops because I wanted it accessible to anyone, regardless of income, savings, etc. And so we had to impose this $2,500 cap on how much can be invested, which is fucking difficult if you're trying to raise a fund and raise a lot of money. But I made that trade-off so that anybody could invest because I wanted every person from South Central who wanted to be a part of it to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And anybody beyond South Central from California to be a part of one of them all. So yeah, I had a core group. I had the largest investment firm in the world. I had Lincoln Properties. It's one of the they've built and managed 450 million square feet of commercial real estate. So we could have got it done because it's not just about buying them all. Like that's $110, $20-ish million acquisition.
Yeah.
But to redevelop them all, to redevelop that 42 acres, that's $1 billion. That's a 10-year process. That's not a person or an individual or a group. You need an army, and you need a wall of money to do that.
Right.
And I had that.
Right.
Yeah.
So wow. Okay. So as of right now, like is that still the goal, or is like what happened? Like
Well, that's two questions. So is it still the goal? Yes. What happened? I honestly couldn't tell you.
So you put the bid in to buy them all?
Put a bid in.
And it was official. It was no nigga shit. It was straight up and down.
Bro, like when I tell you the largest investment manager in the world, the largest. It managed $9 trillion, the largest. And then I had Lincoln Properties. You can look them up. We put in the bid together. So it's not Dave Gross. It's institutions doing it, right?
Right.
And we objectively were the best group. And apparently we're the only group that really had the money because it was awarded to someone back in March. And the feedback we got when they awarded it to this different group is because they were going to close quickly because it's been going on for like 2 years. There's been a bunch of groups that have been awarded. In the end, they all walk away because community pushback or whatever. They struggle to get financing. And so they're like, hey, look, this guy's been circling the mall for a while. We know he's committed. He's going to close quickly. That's why we went with him. Bro, it's August now.
Yeah.
He hasn't closed. So in real estate, if you don't close by the date in the contract, you have to get an extension.
Yeah.
They've given him extension after extension after extension, which is trippy because he was the guy that was going to close quick, and that's why they didn't go with us.
That was going to close before you guys.
It was going to close in 30 days, 40 days, 45 days. And here's the crazy part. Maybe as of this minute, he has the money. Maybe he figured it out. But he's still been trying to raise the money. And so and I know it for a fact because I have friends. I started working on Wall Street 20 years ago. So I have friends who have their own funds. And he's reached out to some of them. I have friends who are senior at large private equity funds. They would hit me up like, hey, we're looking at your deal.
Yeah.
And because they're thinking like, oh, you were going to get the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. So this guy, like, he's still trying to raise money. We would have closed by now, 1,000%. So I don't know what happened.
Do you think that? So do you think? Because I know it's a lot of. I've seen a lot of controversy going on with the Crenshaw Mall, like over the last, I don't know, year, easy, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
at
it's
least a
ramped
year.
up. It's been ramping up like a lot.
Yeah.
But what do you think the reasoning is for them to be waiting to see what whoever that buyer is over you guys?
When I say it doesn't make sense. It's inexplicable.
Gotcha.
It doesn't make because it's one thing for me to feel like it's unfair, right? It's one thing if it was like, oh yeah, like Dave Gross was trying to buy the mall and he thinks it's unfair he didn't get the mall, right? But I have like 2 large institutional, partners, and they're like, this shit makes no sense. Like, how do we not? You know what I mean? And so, and here's the crazy part. This is, facts. Like 2 or 3 times throughout the process, you get interviewed by the person managing the sale. And they're like, hey, did you guys commit that if you guys don't get the deal, like you're not gonna make noise, not gonna, tear down the process? We're like, of course. You know what I mean? We're gonna leave it all in the field. We're gonna fight a clean fight.
Not do press about
We're
it.
gonna fight a clean fight. And if we get through a fair and rigorous process and we're not the ones, it's cool. We submitted our bid in February. And then we submitted, in March, we found out that it wasn't going to us. And it's crazy because we'd already engaged an architect because we were like, no, we know we're going to get it.
We know we're going to get it.
When we submitted that bid, we were like, we know we're going to get it, right? So we already had a kickoff meeting with architects, starting to talk through plans, et cetera. Then we found out, and we're like, huh, this can't be. So we actually, the day they were like, yeah, we awarded to somebody else, we increased our bid by $10 million to a point where it's like they can't not go to the underlying owners of this and say, hey, look, they're well in front now. We gotta go with them. But their response was like, nah, we gotta run a very fair process. And we went with this group because they're gonna close quick and we just need this process to be done. So now you fast forward, that was in March. So it should have closed in April. So May, June, July, going into August, it's like it wasn't a fair process. You know what I mean? Like the shit doesn't make sense. And I didn't say anything for all this time because I'm like, life doesn't work where like everything that's unfair that happens to you, you get to fix it.
Right.
You get to address it.
Yeah.
Right? Part of life is like when shit's unfair, sometimes you gotta take it, like keep moving, learn from it, be stronger. One, after realizing a couple months out, oh, that shit was definitely unfair. There is something else going on. But then like things are always, in situations like this, they're always unfair to people like me in this process. And so if it's not a glitch in the process or one bad outcome in the system, it is the process. It is the system, right? Because the way the world is viewing this shit now, and I literally get people from the biggest banks, the biggest investment firms, from large kind of social impact organizations that call me on a weekly basis, asking me about what's going on, what happened.
What's going on? What's up with the mall?
And they don't understand. And so, and I can't articulate it and I can't say anything. So for the longest time, I was just head down, right? Because I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't.
Yeah.
Like if I stay in a corporate box and kind of eat the loss and roll with the punches, I get to stay in the game. I get to like go hunt for another deal with my large corporate partner, the financial backer, and then this developer. We can go find another, $1 billion project somewhere else if I stay in the box. But I got to eat that loss.
But
right?
I get the sense that it's not necessarily all business though, either with you.
But if I address it, right, and I step out of the box and get radical, well, at least I get to like communicate. We could have bought the shit, right? But then I might sacrifice something. So I've been in a tug of war.
Yeah.
But I had to do it because the way the shit is getting framed right now, so the people who hit me up, they view it as, okay, the developer who got it, he might not have any connection or he might not be the best fit to build this, redevelop this 42 acres in the last black neighborhood in LA. He might not be the best guy, but he's like the only guy that has the capital and the capacity to do it. Because the only other thing we hear is a community-based group that has the passion, the emotion, and they're definitely connected to the community, but do they have the capacity and the capital? And so that's how it's rational to everyone watching the process. We're like, oh, it's a nonprofit group. that's trying to develop a $1 billion project, or it's this guy who, he might not be connected to Crenshaw, but he can develop $1 billion projects. So if that's your view of the world, then it doesn't feel great, but it's like, okay, we understand it. That's just business as usual. But in this particular case, there was a third option. There was the objectively best option in terms of actually having the money. Like Lincoln Properties, one of the best developers in the country, 450 million square feet commercial real estate. Definitely had the capacity. We're the only group that had the capital. We had infinite capital. And then on top of that, right, put me aside, put any connection I have to South LA aside. I'm the only person that created something that was like, okay, everybody has to have a bank that has a lot of money. Everybody has to have a developer. But y'all are talking about, do you care about community? What's a connection with community? I was like, let's bring the community into the deal. Let's put them at the top of the pyramid in the deal, right?
Let them be involved in the process.
Let them be involved in the process, in the deal. So it just doesn't make sense. And that's why I gotta address it now. Because it's like the shit is just, we'll be in the fourth quarter. And then he'll still be getting extensions and the mall won't be closed. When they ask, they'll just be like, well, we had to give him extensions and he was the only one. We were there, we're still there.
Yeah, that narrative is definitely like, that's the painted narrative.
Yeah,
like,
and it's all facts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's any specific reason why you and your team are not being treated fairly in the deal? Like, is there any reason that exists you think that for whoever's selling it, I want to know who's selling it as well, but for any reason, do you think that it's a reason why your team specifically is being treated unfairly in the process?
So one, I'll say something's definitely off, but it's hard to figure out because it just doesn't make sense. They've been struggling to sell the mall. They've been trying for the past 2 years. They've awarded it to like 4 groups. Each time the person walks away because ultimately they can't get the money together or because they cite the community pushback from the activist group that's out there, right? Mm-hmm. So they've tried to do this 4 times. There's never been a group like mine that's been assembled, right? There's never been a group that put the community, the actual, not me, not the face of the other group, but the face of the other group. Fuck an individual person.
Correct.
Like somebody that said, hey, we're gonna make it so that anybody who was born and raised in Crenshaw, I couldn't narrow it to just Crenshaw, but anybody who was born and raised in Crenshaw with at least $1,000, you can invest and own part of this for generations to come. I did that. So it just doesn't make sense. Now, what I'll say is, the people making the decisions, like in my first interview, I had to explain to them like who Nipsey Hussle was, right? And his significance to LA and specifically the Crenshaw district, right? So they're asking me like, hey, how are you connected to this community? I started explaining, I'm born here, my family's born and raised, and I'm partnered with someone who's very important in our community. You have 2 guys in Illinois sitting at a desk in Chicago making decisions about the largest asset in the last black neighborhood in LA.
That's
crazy. And I got to explain to them.
That's crazy.
Like there's a billboard of Nip on the side of the mall.
Right.
I got to explain to them like that.
Yeah.
And so like I'm telling them what I want to do, and I'm going to do what every other developer's going to do, like highest and best use. That's the real estate term for maximizing the value of something. But I'm like, nah, we're going to build like a 50,000 square foot STEM maker space. Like we have a little one we started, but this is going to be the one. And we're going to get, every university in California, they're going to contribute. And every Fortune 100, they're going to contribute. And we started picking up the phone and calling, It just doesn't make sense apart from the fact that people who are making decisions from an island of, and I say this in the literal term of the word, ignorance and indifference.
Just unknowing.
Like how the fuck are you going to sell the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall and need a primer on who Nip Hussle is? It doesn't make sense. So, and I don't know what the relationships are. Real estate is a relationship game. So I don't know if there are relationships behind the scenes that are making them act in a way that doesn't make sense.
Gotcha.
I can't call it.
That one of my challenges, even in the entertainment industry, is trying to quantify and explain culture to people who only care about net metrics or numbers or whatever the fuck it is, right? Now, when it comes to, you mentioned like pushback from the community. right? And I've seen that over and over again as far as like, oh, this group is pushing back because of this white guy, or this group is pushing back because they feel like this black guy is in cahoots with this white guy. There's all kinds of conspiracy theories and stuff like that, right? Have y'all experienced that on your side of things?
No, that was definitely a concern.
Yeah.
Like, it was definitely a concern. It's like, I think I said it, this is $110 million acquisition, but it's $1 billion development over a decade, right? And the way these things turn out, it always takes longer. It always costs more money because you go through an economic cycle, you go through a real estate cycle. So just assume this is going to be a very long-term project. You're going to need a limitless amount of money. So whoever does it is going to have a major investment partner, right? So you're going to have to go to one of the big boys, the traditional players. I had that, but yeah, we had some concern that they're going to find a way to attack us. They're going to say, well, oh, he's gentrifying, he's bringing them in. My response is a couple things, right? I feel confident that I should have been the one to lead the process because I stand in the middle of two worlds that never really connect. Like, on one hand, I can bring in, I can bring Lincoln Properties, and I can bring in, a $9 trillion investment manager to do this $1 billion deal. And I can do it authentically and native and fluent in that world, native to that space. But I can also go to Broadway and 108th and sit in the car with Jeep Rico and talk about buying, where his first studio was.
Yeah, Staples.
Broadway Boxing.
Yeah.
Where the So Way Out store that used to be his shit, it still is, right?
Yeah.
I can do both things. And there aren't many people occupying that space, and we need that. We need some bridge between the worlds where there are people and places that have little or no resources, and the institutions and people that control all the resources. And you want somebody who is not just empathetic and understands, but who's really connected to it and comes from it. And like I said, my entire family is from, I can point, like, grandfather died here, brother died there, other brother got shot there, the home, like, uncles, cousins, this is what happened. Like, come on. But if you want to make it about who's really connected to the community or for the community, then don't make it about an individual. Like, that's what fucking I created something called Own Our Own. So however many people there are in South Central, every one of them could own a piece of the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall. And the finesse is, I got this partner that manages $9 trillion. They're going to give us all the money. We're going to put in a little bit of money. We're going to take a piece of their profits. So I'm going to do some shit that's never, ever been done.
Yeah.
And it's not like an idea, I hope, or I wish. It's all put together. We'll do it today. Own Our Own California is a live thing. It's ready to go. We're gonna buy that boxing gym first. But we could buy the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Plaza tomorrow if it came back our way.
What do you think it's gonna take at this point? Like, is it us as a community? Is it the people, rallying around the cause for Own Our Own California? Is it legislation? Is it politicians? It's not politicians or legislation. It's a private sale. So the politicians can't do anything until after it's sold. Then this guy's gonna have to go to them and say, hey, here are my plans, here's what I wanna do. And then they can weigh in that process. Gotcha.
The community can weigh in that process.
When you say it's a private sale, sorry, but you said it's a private, who owns the fucking mall?
Right now, technically, there are 5 pension funds that own it. So they invested in a private equity fund that bought the mall. The private equity fund was shut down. So they have to sell the mall to return the money to the private equity funds that are calling the shots. So it's a group of large investment, and
so these entities.
They're entities. And these entities picked another large corporate player. So Deutsche Bank has an arm that does this sort of thing. They manage real estate assets, they manage sales and acquisitions for people. So these pension funds, they picked a third party so they can say, hey, we didn't make the ultimate decision. We hired someone who knows this stuff to do it, and they ran the process. Clearly, it's a bad process. It's been you want to sell something at an auction, like at the end of the auction, you pick not just the highest price, you pick a combination of the highest price and the person that's actually going to close, that can bring that money to the table, and can get buy-in from the people you need to get buy-in from, so the community, et cetera, to then consummate the transaction. 4 times now, they failed. They've picked someone who couldn't do one of those things. They picked groups that maybe had the money, but then they saw the smoke the community was bringing, they're like, yeah, we're out.
Yeah.
Or they picked groups that they lost, they couldn't get the money together. Right now, I don't know what it is, but the guy hasn't closed. I know after he closed, he was still looking for money. The community-based group, they're still on him. He's not folding to that pressure. So right now, it's just he's trying to figure out the money. But this process, the owners are, again, that people making decisions about other people and about an entire community and culture from an island of literal ignorance and indifference. Like, you hired some guys from Chicago to sell the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall.
Right.
And they don't know shit about shit.
Right.
Apparently.
Okay, so I'm gonna pivot this back to you then, and we can wrap up. But for instance, my introduction to David Gross was through Nip Hussle. It's my bro, right? Him doing business with you and befriending you was good enough for me.
Yeah.
People tell me that all the time. Oh, you fuck with this? It's good. That's good. That's all I need to know, because I know me and him both authentically don't fuck with things just because. There has to be a purpose. There has to be a reason, a rationale. Why should people fuck with Dave Gross? Why should people fuck with On Our Own California? And why you for the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall and what you're doing?
We're at a place where everybody knows shit has to change, right? Like that there's so many historical legacy issues that impact our community. So I'm talking about black people, but also in LA, it's Hispanic people. There are things that impact us that have been unfair, et cetera, right? One of the ways we gotta fight that, or we gotta counterbalance those things, not everything's about money, but a lot of the problems we have, they originated with the lack of resources and money. Then it created other shit that's not about money. So whatever your worldview is, right? Like, fuck capitalism, it's about activism, it's about, soulfulness, mindfulness. To fix the problems we have, we need money. And money being channeled to our community so it impacts all of our communities. And we need institutions, we need processes and systems to do that, right? It hasn't happened historically. There's not someone that stepped into the fold and said, I'm gonna create that thing, that literally invest in, this inner city, that inner city, and in a very authentic kind of way that's for the community. Not like, hey, we're gonna build this behemoth of an apartment complex, and then we're gonna start changing the way the neighborhood looks. I want to
kick everybody.
You know what I mean? So whatever your views on wealth and money are, like, people from our community is probably driven by the fact that we never had a lot of wealth and money. So we're like, nah, fuck that. That's black capitalism. No, bro. Like, if I was just a black capitalist, I could still just be making money on Wall Street, or I could still be doing deals in the Hamptons and Sag Harbor. I could be doing deals in Santa Monica and Beverly Hills. But I'm like, no, we need the lever for change for all of us is for systems and institutions to flow money into our community. And my view is that it has to be different this time. It can't be about an individual. I want you guys to rock with me, but my whole thing is I'm elevating all of us. Like, let's own our own. Like, let's all invest money into this thing and invest it back in our community so we all own it. Win or lose, we do it together.
Gotcha.
So that's why. And just like I said, man, we need people that stand on the wall and that can get down on both sides. I can go into, you name the Goldman Sachs, Cerberus, Blackstone, BlackRock, you name I know the little homies from Inglewood. I know I got a brother.
Rest in peace to your brother.
Yeah, so what I did with Nip, when me and Nip were starting in the Crenshaw district, I'm connected by family or friends to somebody that looks like me and you all over LA and all over South LA. So that's the why you should rock with me. I hear shit from people about me I don't even know about me. Man, I've been consistent and I've been, diligent in the path that I'm on, man. Like, trying to make this shit a real thing. And I want to do it once and I want to make it real. And I'll probably back out and pass the baton to somebody else. But right now we need somebody that's about it.
It's gonna do the actual work.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate, you explaining yourself and, even opening up being, because I don't remember you talking for at least the last 18 months to 2 years about anything, like outside of, little things here and there. But I do want people to know something that I specifically that intrigued me about you was it's not necessarily, it's never really an I conversation.
Yeah.
You always use us, we, our, you always use those different words, and it's never like a me, I type of thing. And that's something that you pay attention to those little nuances when people talk.
Can I tell you why? So we've grown up our whole lives, and I can speak for your life too. We've had we can probably count the iconic people that are considered icons, and for black people on two hands. So the Oprahs, the, Bob Johnsons, and then you throw some athletes in there, and it's fucked up because those people are really the people who all of our community looks up to and views them as the successful or the average kid in a non-inner city community. They have relatives, they have people in their block, they have neighbors, extended family, and extended network that are successful in different paths that they can look up to, right? So we're not haters as a people. Like, we love Oprah, we love this one, we love that one. The basketball player, the rapper that gets the bag. It's a numbers game for us. This shit doesn't work if it's just 1% or 2% of us make it really big, and that's the only pathway we see. We need a world where there's progress for all of us in our communities that don't have the resources, right? And the only way is to collectivize. That's really the only way. Or it's just called a poverty trap.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you have a long enough lifetime, you can come out of a poverty trap, but life isn't that long. And so the only way is for us to collectivize and try to come out of this shit together. And so the one thing I want people to know is I'm not some saint. I never wanted to be a preacher, teacher, none of that shit. I want to make money. I want to live life. I want to have fun. I don't want to be on a pedestal or be viewed as different, because that's a trap you set for yourself. What I do know is, I've got to live two different worlds, right? There's a world where I could be, what all of my brothers, uncles, cousins, sisters, aunts who never left LA, that could have been my reality.
Yeah.
And my reality would be really different.
That's a lot of people's reality.
But I got to go see a whole different reality. You know what I mean? I got to live in Singapore, Australia, London, and just live a different, and so it's that range, right? And I'm like, nah, this shit needs to be normalized. And so I can't feel right if, my core family and friends are good, and then beyond that, well, shit, you want your community to be good too. And then it's like, even if you're not from New Orleans or not from Baltimore, well, fuck, that's kind of your community too.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So I'm normal and I'm regular. I want the same shit everybody else wants. But I feel like, now if I don't got the money, but I do have the knowledge and I have the heart, you know what I mean, to make some sort of wave or change. So the reason this shit was so important, and the thing that compelled me to step up and speak, because I could have spoke up about it a long time ago. I could have tried to use the shit to build my career up more. I was pursuing $1 billion. I only told a few people. It's crazy. One of the first people I reached out to, when we knew we were gonna get it, I hit up Big Boy. I was like, Big, I need to come on the radio. You're gonna have to give me a platform and stand by us so they don't try to knock us down.
Yeah.
We're gonna buy this mall.
Yeah.
Told a few people. Shout out to Matt Barnes. Matt was the only real influencer that I tapped in with, because his network is so crazy. He had everybody. But the reason I'm saying it is, you remember when Magic Johnson did the theater at the Baldwin Hills Mall?
Yeah.
It sounds crazy looking back that somebody doing a nice theater in a black neighborhood made such an impact. But I was in fucking Texas when he did it. I was in Texas, and that shit was and it's, he was my favorite player of all time. Love him to death. Lakers all day. But despite the championships, despite Showtime, the shit that he did that impacted me most was when he did the theater.
The theater.
And I was like, oh shit.
At the mall.
Because it had never been done. You never seen it. And that's why, even though it sounds small now, and I've written Magic Johnson 2 letters in my life. And so when that happened, I wrote him a letter. I don't know where the fucking letter went. but it was that impactful to me.
The
right?
letter was you was just telling him.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite player. I loved him. So I wrote him a letter when that announcement was made. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be a businessman. I'm from LA, blah, blah, blah. And then a nice little counterpoint to that, I wrote him a letter after we bid on the mall, when we were bidding on the mall. And I was like, hey, you inspired this. Because I was like, when you did the mall, and I was like, and then you did the Fridays and the Starbucks in Inglewood, I was like, that changed my younger siblings' lives. They went to that Friday, and they went to that Starbucks, but definitely the Friday. Every prom, every graduation, they were always there. And so I know how these things, they make tangible impact.
Culture.
They make tangible impact because people can go and see and feel these spaces, and it changes your perception of your neighborhood. But then the symbolism just travels. I was in fucking Texas, and then I was in New York when he did the Fridays but that impacted so many people. Like, oh shit! If you go Google it, you'll see how big deal it was that Magic Johnson was bringing these Fortune 100
I agree.
kind of brands.
I remember that.
And so
I was little, but I remember that.
I feel conflicted when I think about it now. I was like, damn, why was that such a big deal? Like our community's that fucked up with the lack of resources that somebody opened a nice theater, like in one of the, you know what I mean? That's crazy when you think about it. But today it's still the same. Today, a lot of the neighborhoods either have nothing or they start having things when the quote unquote gentrifiers come in. And so, yeah, I think it'd be really profound, really impactful for the 18-year-old version of me now. Some kid in Inglewood, some kid in Texas, some kid in Harlem, to know, like, oh, okay, a black dude who really connects with us, he looks like us, from a place like us, who is still with us, who rock with Nipsey Hussle, like, oh, that shit's the marathon continuing. I can see myself in him, I can do that. Just like when I saw Magic and I wrote him the letter, I didn't really know if I could, I didn't see a pathway to being a billionaire, but I was like, man, Magic, he did it. He's one of the ones. Like, we love you for that. Thank you. So yeah, that's why I'm sharing it now, because like the whole narrative of only other groups that don't have a connection in our neighborhood can really have the capital and the capacity. That's how they get you.
Yeah.
Can develop our neighborhoods. It's false, bro. I could have done it. I could have sparked, 1,000, 10,000, 1 million, minds could have been like, oh shit.
So I remember thinking like finances, economics, money was white people shit. Stocks, because it's not obtainable. Like what you was just saying about how, oh, that's their shit over there. Mm-hmm. That's not our shit. But I remember retraining my brain to think like, okay, this is obtainable. Yeah. So even even Magic Johnson being your seed and you just kept watering that seed until it sprouted, right? I agree with you in the terms that symbolism matters, representation matters, imaging, it matters, right? But let's say that somebody doesn't necessarily believe. Like, how do we get them to the table? How do we get somebody who seeing is believing, right? But if somebody doesn't necessarily believe that it's possible, oh, this black dude and his groups that correlate and base from this community can actually acquire something like the Crenshaw Mall.
That's why I'm laying it all on the line right now, saying we could have done it, because that's why I care more about this shit than anybody involved in the deal, 1,000%, for so many reasons. Like, there's so much shit that's happened over the past 4 or 5 years, and I really feel like my entire life's story is leading to some shit, like leading to this. Wow. I'd have been happy to have done this deal, and I could have walked away from like investment finance. I'm like, damn, I did something that makes all of us proud, right? I didn't have to win a championship or a Super Bowl, but I did some shit that makes all of us proud, and I can go be cool. In this specific instance, that's why it would have been important. Apart from that, how do we get people to see it's real? The reason I reached out to Nip and like knew like he's the one, I gotta start this thing that I want to start with. People with his platform, they're the ones that have to do it, but he was one that had his platform and was doing it. Yeah. And doing it in a very genuine, authentic way that has pulled everybody in. Like pure, honest, showed you everything. So we need that in our community. We need the people who have the platforms to like either individually or collectively show this shit. Like everything else we show, our kids want. We show the private jets, they want the private jets. Yeah. We show the fucking Richard Mille, they want the Richard Mille. Yeah. You show the bags and the tags, they want that. You start showing like now we're buying, developing, acquiring our own shit, everybody will be on that.
Yeah, I like that. Hey, look, I hear it. I'm glad that we was able to do this.
And look, I want to thank you because like so many times shit is and not just for black people, but like black, white, whatever, in the corporate space, just in life in general, unfair things happen. But like I said, this is one of those times like, now I'm willing to like die on this hill. This shit should be us. This should be like all of LA, and specifically black LA, having a chance to buy this shit with a real team of a real army that can do it. That should be the play. And it's like, it makes no sense being able to reach out to a DJ Head who has a platform and has a voice and say, bro, I need help if you don't do it when it matters. And so I appreciate you for using the platform. And whatever happens with the mall, the narrative of, well, it went to this group because nobody else could do it, the world will know on record, like that's cap. And everything I've said is fact. And like I've showed you, I've shown you the documents, I've shown you. Yeah. So I appreciate you, bro.
For sure. Yeah. No, I appreciate it. We're gonna see what happens.
Yeah.